Some of those. Hello, everyone joining us on the broadcast. We are hoping Achal joins us as well, but we shall begin discussing on our own. So who wants to offer some thoughts, feedback, questions, puzzlement?
So, I guess I had a question. Thinking about, I guess my main question is about how does the concept of reliability change, right, from what it is today, where it's based off of some sort of, authority, and I think to use the word that they used, and now we're moving towards a person, and so are we thinking about ways of reliability in terms of more people to offer the same perspective, right? Clearly, like what they mentioned, the more people you ask, the more people who have interpretation. So I guess that's my question on reliability.
Yep. Do we want to surface a few more questions and then see if we tackle them together, or? Sorry, did you shoot Achal an email? Okay. Yeah.
I have a question about um, essentially what drives some of the need for the anxiety about references and citations. Some people mentioned, I think, in the film, people were trying to put things on English Wikipedia and stuff kept getting taken off, which I can totally understand the frustration of that. I'm wondering on some of the languages where there isn't a lot of printed material, just is there more sort of within that community um, it's more acceptable to be posting things without citations or with oral citations, like, or are they sort of taking the definition of what's an authoritative source from English or from European languages?
Great question. Um, oh, the people on the broadcast can't ask us questions directly. Uh, well, but no one else is on the Hangout, so we don't know if anyone is watching the broadcast, right? So if you are, reach out to Sati by GChat. Uh, that's shouston@wikimedia.org, and she will channel you into this room. All right. Any other thoughts before we tackle this? Comments? No? Okay. Um, so I'm happy to discuss this briefly with all of you, but I can offer some initial informative answers. So I'll take your question, Danny, first, because it's simpler. The answer is yes. In other smaller Wikipedias, there is greater readiness, willingness to accept um, articles largely without citation or particular assertions without citation. So yes, you can get away with it in smaller wikis, or younger wikis, rather. And this is the way it used to be on English Wikipedia too. The real old timers remember this. You know, we used to just show up on the wiki and write what we knew or thought we knew, right? And if you dig hard enough into core articles, even on English Wikipedia, you can discover that the initial revision was spectacularly wrong. Was like some misremembered piece from civics class that someone just put up there. But as Ward Cunningham noted, the fastest way to get an answer on the internet is to provide a wrong one and get corrected, and that is working. So that still works on smaller, younger Wikipedias. But at the same time, the other half of your hypothesis there is also true. Some other wikis do tend to adopt English Wikipedia standards, like contemporary English Wikipedia standards. Those standards have evolved on English Wikipedia. English Wikipedia did not start out requiring citations. And have adopted those standards and are trying to impose them on a small community. Now, encountering the wiki, finding an article that you think you can expand on is motivating. You want to expand on it. Then you discover, oh, wait, I need to dig up a citation. Well, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I mean, that is a huge what do you call it, narrowing factor of that funnel, right, of creating Wikipedians. Some people would do it anyway,
that
of course.
That is actually here, like I have that experience here.
Yeah,
like,
it's, you know, I'm
writing in English, working at the foundation.
Right, you could contribute something, but digging a citation, you're not going to do that today. And you have all the benefits of being in Silicon Valley, having access to a bunch of resources, etc. So yes, it's a significant problem, and I'm not aware of a systematic study of this, but in my subjective but extensive observation, I would say the best way to tackle this is to actually grow the quality or raise the quality bar on your wiki organically. You start by tolerating a lot of uncited stuff. And as you grow, as the community grows, one day you look around and you go, wait, a lot of people are already relying on our wiki. It's no longer a little toy. It's no longer a little crazy hobby. People are citing us left and right. The press keeps quoting us. We should get our act together and provide some citations, at least on our featured articles. You know, that's how it starts, you know, and then you go, well, you know, even if you're not a featured article, some kinds of claims need citations. If you want to assert someone was convicted of a crime, you should provide a citation. But if you're just, you know, if you just want to assert that this happened on a Tuesday, maybe you don't need a citation. I mean, these things are evolved. So does that answer your question? All right. So to your question, Sati, about verifiability, and was that what reliability you called it? Yeah. So what does reliability mean in a wiki where we allow oral citations? The whole point of the verifiability policy on Wikipedia is that Wikipedia should contain things that are not just correct, but are verifiably correct. And the whole point is that it should not be up to, I should not have to trust the wiki. I can dig into the citation, I can look it up for myself. And so if we allow oral citations, verifiability or reliability depends on what that citation looks like. And the film provided a hint to what it looked. I mean, they didn't provide a template, right? We don't know what that would actually end up looking like on the wiki. That is very much TBD and is up to communities to take up. I mean, if we are convinced by this thesis, by all means, let us make it happen on our wiki. Easier said than done, but can be done. One way that this could happen, though, was hinted at in the film, and that is, I think it was the gentleman from McGill University who was talking about, what if we provide in the citation a link to the interview, to the media, to the recording, to the video. More motivated than yes.
Hi, Asa. Sorry, I just joined back.
Hi, Acha. We've just started the Q&A phase a few minutes ago, and I'm trying to channel you in responding to the question of what does verifiability look like if we accept oral citations. That was the question.
Great. I think you can turn video on. I don't think it's affecting sound quality if you would like to.
All right. Can we turn video off on our side? Can you help?
Yeah. No, sorry. What I meant was you can turn my video on.
Oh, only you can turn your video on.
Oh, I see. Okay. This is the first time.
Hover towards the top.
Okay. Yes. Got it. Thank you very much. Okay. And can you turn your video on as well so I can see?
All right.
Yeah. Great.
So you can seamlessly join. I was just saying that it is very much TBD what verifiability would end up looking like. The film does not offer us what the template would look like, what the syntax would be. that very much remains up to communities to take up and decide to implement. But I was just suggesting, and you can take it up from there, that the gentleman from McGill University was suggesting that what if we include in the citations, what if we include links to the media, to the audio, to the video of the interview from which you gained the oral citation, and then you show that the marula fruit is processed in this way, and I'm saying this because this video, this citation, this woman who does that told me so.
Let me just clarify on my question, because I think actually it's a little bit different than what you're saying. It's more of the concept you were saying of trust, right? That in some sense, verifiability right now is based on there is some kind of scholarly journal authority, right, who can tell me. It is a very interesting point about what is factual, and what is that fact actually based on. And now with an oral citation, we're saying it's kind of based off a person, right? And there is a concept of trusting that person's authority and education and why they know their stuff. And so how does verifiability look? Not just the fact that I can go and watch the video, but that person can.
Right, that's clear. Achal, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. And it's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for asking it. I'd like to start by saying that all scholarly material is a perspective. It's a perspective that's merely been vetted and passed through more hands than one person speaking. But the idea that somehow there's an objectivity or a neutrality to scholarly opinion expressed in a leading academic journal, for instance, this is a popular idea, but it's wrong. So I think it is important to distinguish the objectivity, the presumed objectivity of scholarly material for being as much of an opinion as one individual speaking. But in terms of ideas by which we can have more verifiability, if we have something like oral citations, Asaf's point about linking back to the source data is a good one, and it's in fact what we did. There's a research project, a page on Meta for the Oral Citations project. I sent the link along to Sati and to Asaf earlier, and maybe I'm not sure if I can share that link with you again here through a chat message, but Asaf, maybe you can share that with the group watching this later. What we did was exactly that. We had every citation linked back to the interview, from which you could then see video or audio of the interview, or you could see a full transcript of the interview. If it was in a language other than English, we could also access an English translation of the entire transcript of the interview. What it meant is that frequently oral citations, albeit in a limited context, in the way that we use them, provided more information readily accessible online than, for instance, a citation to a print publication that has no online equivalent. You've seen these all the time, right? Page 136 of this book, and the book is referenced, but the book isn't online, and you have no way of verifying that. The only way you have of verifying it, in fact, is going to a library, accessing a physical copy, and looking up that page to see if it says what it means. So personally, I think that a link to a physical book is far more opaque and slightly less verifiable than some of the oral citations that we use in this project.
So that touches on the act of verifying, but to reflect on the other aspect of Sati's question, which was the presumed authority of the source, I think we can acknowledge and we can problematize a little. What are we to accept oral citations about? Are we to accept oral citations about theoretical physics? The examples we saw in the film have to do with crafts, with folk practices like dances and games, local practices, local history, which of course blend into myth, but not hard science. So, and it's not as easy as that, of course, either, right? So do we only accept oral citations if it is your village's history as the elders tell it? That could sound appealing, but then what if your village was visited by a 19th century German scholar who documented what he understood to be what your village elders are saying? Of course, he was working through not one but two translators. However, he published it in a scholarly journal, and his version conflicts with what you are recording today in the same village with native speakers at your disposal. What do we do in that case with these competing citations? Achal?
So again, I think this is a very good question, and I'd like to use that to talk about the broader context in which the Oral Citations project was made. The historiography, for instance, of Southern Africa is almost entirely led from white missionaries in the 17th and 18th centuries who come to Southern Africa and begin documenting the history of the people who haven't documented themselves as much in print. That problem exists even today. So, for instance, that tension that you were describing between the German missionaries' account and the local account, sometimes that tension doesn't even exist because there isn't a local account in print. So, for instance, the scholarship of Southern Africa is largely dominated by Western published material about that area, despite the fact that there are hundreds of millions of people who live there. This is not a bad thing or a good thing. I'm not describing this as a crime. I am saying that it's a reality, and it's a reality that at odds with the intelligence of the area itself in some way. I think that the question of where you draw lines around what you might use oral citations for is an interesting question, and it goes back to the origins of the no original research rule on Wikipedia, which, by all accounts, or shall we say by unverified oral accounts, is something that came up because precisely people were trying to reinvent physics. They were trying to disprove laws of gravity in their home and give some weight to the results by tampering with Wikipedia entries on physics. So it was, in fact, this kind of junk home science that led to having the rule of no original research implemented. And I get that, and I get how this could easily descend into something that looks like mumbo jumbo. So when I was working on this project, and this was a perspective shared by, I think, pretty much everyone I worked with, we wanted to stay clear of myth and a sort of reinvention of history according to Wing. What we wanted to work on were non-magical aspects of tropical life, food and worship and dance and other sort of incontestable everyday things that simply didn't have the documentation they needed to become respectable units of knowledge. So I understand that this could lead to questions of what are the limits of this exercise and so forth. I think though it's a sort of what if and but what kind of question that could be answered if we go into this with good faith. The larger context of this, I'd like to talk about a little for a minute, if I may. I think it's easy to think of this as a tropical problem, as something that is purely a situation whereby people like me, who are Western educated, who live in a couple of different third world countries, uh, want to see as being a better representation of ourselves and our lives and so forth. And yes, that's partly true, but I think that the broader principle extends far beyond the third world. So, in my own life, for instance, I've spent many years working on access to medicines for AIDS. I did not work on this in the 80s and the 90s because I was too young, but I have consumed that history enormously, and I'm very interested in it. If, for instance, in the United States, you were to try and document the gay rights movement, which I had worked very closely with, you wouldn't be able to do that except through an oral history of ACT UP. And the reason that you wouldn't be able to do that is that gay and lesbian people who barely had any kind of legally sanctioned power until the late 1970s, and certainly, in some places not even fully now, in Europe and in the United States, also have a very skewed documentation of what they are. If you were to write, so the history of the gay and lesbian and transgender movement in the United States, for instance, is available on film. It's available through oral histories of people who founded a brilliant organization in the 80s called ACTA. It is not necessarily available in a stream of scholarship that stretches back 200 years. This extends to any number of other people, racial minority groups, to women, and to all kinds of non-dominant narratives in the first world, which are increasingly becoming important, but can't suddenly produce books about where they were in the last 200 years.
Absolutely, and to answer my own challenge about what we might do when a local oral citation conflicts with an existing scholarly citation, I would submit to you that Wikipedia already has mechanisms to deal with that kind of thing. I mean, we often have written scholarly sources that disagree with each other. What do we do? Well, if we cannot objectively determine that this source is better because better informed or clearly does not rely on false information, we report the disagreements, serve our readers by showing that this old account by this German scholar does not comport with this live testimony by locals today. Make of that what you will, dear reader. We can do that on Wikipedia, and we often do, about very controversial topics. Other comments, and then I will finally ask you, Achal, to tell us a little bit about the aftermath of making this film, and sort of the call to action and what happened and especially didn't happen following it. But let's take a few more comments.
Something that occurs to me about the reliability in the authorities is that possibly, and this may be true for scholarly work as well as for history, that a fact isn't really reliable until it's disputed. That if one person says in the village, this is how we play this game, that's the only source of information that there is, and nobody asks any more questions about it. That's the fact, as far as I know. It's really not until somebody says, no, this is how you do the dance, or in a scholar world, no, that interpretation is wrong. Until someone questions it, like that's where the actual factness of it, I think, comes in. That's the reliability of it.
Absolutely. We see this as well on regularly, where the more beating an article takes, the better it ends up being. A painful process, but in the end, you have the nuance, you have the correction of whatever was exaggerated or overstated or incorrect.
So I don't know if this is going to be very articulate, but one thing that intrigued me about this film, some of the things you said, and some of the things that Estop was talking about earlier in terms of how different Wikipedias
evolve over time in different ways, and how that's very different for smaller Wikipedias now that English Wikipedia is where it is. I think one of the challenges that we run into with this topic is sort of feeling limited by the current systems that exist on English Wikipedia now to handle problems, and sort of where we imagine English Wikipedia might be going in terms of what it covers. So you mentioned that example of the guy who's reimagining theoretical physics in his living room, and how English Wikipedia came up with a way to sort of solve that problem. And there are limits to the system. So obviously one thing I think about is notability. We're looking at oral citations. How do we know something's notable or not? And I don't see that as a reason to say we couldn't have oral citations, but it would be really interesting to sort of invite your thoughts about how you might reimagine some of these structures on English. I mean, I know it's the way that the solution the community needs to come up with, but there's a lot of really interesting thinking around those points. Thanks for turning my music there.
Achal, you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. Well, just a couple of comments to things that were said earlier. We were talking about disagreement, and this is very, very important to me, and it was important to us in this project. So, for instance, and this you have to look a little closely for. You have to go into the interviews to see it's not apparent immediately from the film. But in Limpopo, which is a remote province in South Africa, towards the north of South Africa, where we were speaking to a group of women who play the game, Party, that you see in the film. The older women and the younger women had completely different perspectives on what that game was. They had different perspectives on how the game was played, whether the game was played at all. The older women said the younger women don't do it. The younger women said, well, actually, we do. We just use different material. I think the spirit of disagreement was very, very important for us to keep. We did not want the oral citation to be the first testimony of one person only, which is why we used multiple sources in every single article that we created out of this project. There were at least 3 or 4 different testimonies that often collided to make an article exactly as Asaf, you said. It happens on most Wikipedia pages that are worth reading. You go to the Wikipedia page of Princess Diana, and that reconciles the fact that there were columnists and commentators who thought that she was the next incarnation of Mother Teresa, and other perspectives that thought she was in fact a relentless publicity hound. And we can reconcile that in real life, and we can reconcile that on Wikipedia. And it's I think what makes the very best pages on Wikipedia, contention. And so this idea that the oral account might depart in some in some way that breaks Wikipedia from traditional scholarship, I think that's a red herring, because I think in most cases all opinions depart from each other in one way or another, and we're fine about reconciling them both in our real lives and on Wikipedia. I don't see this as being that different in any way.
Other questions, comments? Okay, so Achal, let me ask you. So after you made this movie, what happened?
That's another story altogether. And I feel like now it's been enough time since 2011 for me to be to say that it didn't work out. It didn't work out for anyone. It didn't work out for me, and it certainly didn't work out for Wikipedia. I'm very disappointed by it. I think I'm also touched by the idea that I might have disappointed other people through this project, and I'll explain what I mean. So we worked on the project, we made this film, we showed the film for the very first time at Wikimania in Haifa in 2011. And immediately upon showing it, there was a fair amount of media interest, and there were, I wouldn't say flattering, but there were supportive pieces that appeared in the media, in the international media, uh, in the months right after it was made. I, however, didn't get to enjoy the tone of those pieces, partly because I was being assaulted almost on a daily basis, both on mailing lists and in personal email and on wiki. Uh, I'm conscious that I'm speaking to a room full of people who work at the Wikimedia Foundation, some of whom at least will be editors who probably face far greater uh, challenges of hostility on Wiki than I have. My editing experience when I was editing a lot was relatively calm, and because it was in the early days, I suppose, and I wasn't prepared for the kind of reaction that I got. So, for instance, I would wake up one morning and find that every single audio file that I had uploaded to Wikimedia Commons that served as the basis for the interview that I cited had been marked for deletion. They were marked for deletion 6 times, and they were marked for deletion because of apparent copyright violations, which is very interesting because I have both been trained in it at some of the best places in the world and worked on it for a very long time. And I'm acutely aware of ethical considerations when one is talking to someone else, especially on film. But there were a number of different things that happened over a period of about a year or
So,
two, I think.
actually, just for clarity, could you spell out what those attacks were? What the tenor
Yeah.
of those attacks were?
Yes. Again, I apologize for characterizing them as attacks. I think that there were, in some cases, robust disagreements, which I engaged with and I appreciated, because I think that any argument that's new is worth criticizing and fighting for in a rational and legitimate manner, and I welcome that kind of disagreement. There were, however, actions taken by editors who had far greater support networks than I did, and a far better structure to do what they were doing, and which I was inadequately prepared to respond to. These include, for instance, a whole host of problems that different people created with the infrastructure of this project, which were the audio and video files that were uploaded on Media Commons. These included, over the course of about a year, series fuss that occurred on the pages of articles, especially on English Wikipedia, but also in 3 languages on which we work: Sesuatu, Hindi, and Malayalam, by people who were wholly disinterested in those languages, but were very interested in opposing the idea that something like this could be done, and especially in this manner. Uh, uh, I blame a part of that hostility I received on myself. I think that there were that some of these problems could have been better handled had I been a more experienced editor, had I been someone who had a larger natural group of people and editors I was working with on Wiki, rather than being kind of a lone wolf as I was at the time that the project was done. But I think that some of the reaction was unjustified, and the problem was that. This is a bit of a segue, but I work in Brazil. I do a lot of work on race and identity, and there's a funny thing that happens in Brazil whenever there are racial surveys that are carried out. It's a highly unequal society by color, and one of the features of surveys of racism in Brazil is that apparently 50% of the population that is white will frequently say, when asked about racism, will say, I'm not racist, but I mean, everyone else is. Which has led to a a scholar defining this as this idea of an island of democracy. Everybody thinks of herself or himself as an island of democracy in a sea of in a sea of bigotry. And this was the reaction that I faced when talking about this project, or even this idea of opening up what I think is a legitimate intellectual space for the future of Wikipedia. What I have always heard, no one ever said to me, "This is wrong. This is a bad direction." Everybody said, "Yes, yes, yes. I completely understand. I can see exactly what you're saying." But you know, these editors, they're not going to go for it. There's no way you'll get away with it. I completely support you. I understand exactly what you're saying. This is definitely something we must be thinking of. But, there's no way that anyone's going to support this. The first time I heard it, I was encouraged. I thought this was interesting. But after hearing this for 2 years, you realize that in fact it's just a signal to say that there is no way that a project like this has any kind of tenure in the media movement.
Compliment which is the foundation kind of left you to it after you were done into this. And there was no team here, there was no organizational behind this to, for example, orchestrate a community consultation on this matter, something that today we would definitely do in the context and plan to do in the context of commissioning you did not receive the support that this deserved, and that even talking about this, let alone implementing oral citations, does require more, as you said, a network of editors who are on board and who are willing to seriously engage in the debate. And that was largely lacking at the time, I think.
Yeah, I think it was another foundation, another time. I don't necessarily, I don't blame the foundation in any way, and I don't think that. I think that I was sort of alone, but I think that was because there were very few people on hand to help in any manner. And the people on hand to help, which was the foundation then, and perhaps even the movement today, is so caught up with what is happening in the moment. And as we know, there's a lot happening in the moment. That flame war on Wikimedia L, that other incredible, the other 10 flame wars on internal L, which I unsubscribed from, but is apparently also thankfully dead. That thing with that chapter and that thing with that FTC. There are these immense overlapping everyday bureaucratic problems that completely stymie any larger structural intellectual examination for progress. I sincerely believe this.
And so we will wrap it up, but I don't want to end on a downer. So can you give us a message of hope around oral citations? If you were to advise us, you are in our advisory board. If you were to offer us some kind of vision for a positive vision for next steps, what would you say? Not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
Sure. Look, I don't want to end, on a note of pessimism either. What I will say is this: if the underlying idea of that project I worked on resonates with you in any way, I think that's sort of small success enough. Whether the intellectual spirit of that project is enacted in some way in the Wikipedia of today as we know it, or in some other form, in some other project, in some other space, I think doesn't really matter. I think if there is even a small iota of thinking around some of the structural underpinnings of these projects we're part of. If there is some inquiry, that's a positive step. We're examining the fairness and the worldly basis of some of these things we do. I think that that's a great way to start. And I think wherever something like that ends up, we're good.
Thank you. And I will add one glimmer of hope of my own, which is 4 years are a long time in our world, and some of the smaller or mid-sized Wikipedias have taken a few large steps since 2011, and they may be a good testing ground for some of that idea, for some of those conversations to happen. In other words, the revolution could come from outside English Wikipedia. Who knows? All right, I would like to thank you for showing up. Thank you very much, Achal, for all your work and for waking up exceedingly early today to talk to us. You missed the applause.
Okay, I can see it somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll be in touch if and when we can maybe restart some conversations around this, and definitely keep you in the loop, Achal.
Great. Thank you, Sati. Thank you, Asad. And this was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.